Welcome back. So my continuing look at teams in the off season and what they've done and just looking at where they're at and everything. I want to talk about the Washington Capitals today again. Not season previews, way too early for that. But it is still fun to look at what teams have done and how their lineups look right now. And so for the Washington Capitals, this is a team that made the playoffs in a year where they weren't really expected to after having missed them the year before. And how they got there with being 28th in goal scoring was by the skin of their teeth, which showed up in the playoffs when they got swept aside. The moves that have been made in the offseason clearly made to make sure that if/when this team gets back to the playoffs, they won't get swept aside so easily in the first round. But will it work? Is the question, right? So this is a team that was 17th in goals against. Their defense was pretty good. They won some games that I had no idea how they were doing it, and it was something I openly talked about when I did review videos during the season. But Ovechkin had a pretty good second half after a quiet first half. He ends up with 31 goals and 34 assists for 65 points in 79 games. I don't think OV is going to get back to 50 goal range, and I don't think he'll get back to 40 goal range. He's almost 40 years of age now. So at that point in time, you know the scoring is going to drop off. Eventually, Father Time catches you. And so Ovechkin, I still think he probably passes the Gretzky record. I don't know that he does it this season because I think he's sitting too far back and his play has dropped off a bit in terms of his goal scoring. But the good news is Washington showed this past season they didn't really need a power play to get to the playoffs. At times, anyways, that power play had its struggles. And they did it without the goals. So if they can get more goals, that's the plan, right? So Strome likely still in that first line. 27 goals, 40 assists this last season. Dylan Strome, really solid year with Washington. Tom Wilson played 74 games, had 18 goals, 17 assists, 35 points. I will grant you, Wilson could hit 20 goals this season. I could see Ovechkin hitting 30 to 35. And Strome was just 3 goals short of 30 this past season, so maybe we see Strome take that next step again this year and his production goes up a little bit. Then on the second line, you have like just the wild card, which is McMichael, and we'll talk about a couple other wild cards in the lineup too. But McMichael with 18 goals, 15 assists, 33 points in 80 games, very good. And I think he's come along slowly, but the offense is there, and I think that he can take a jump this year too. I think he could hit 25 to 30 goals. Then you've got PL Dubois coming off of, I think, the worst season of his career. And I don't know that that's something that anybody can debate here because 16 goals, 24 assists, 40 points after signing that long-term extension with the Kings after the trade from the Caps. It was just a big oof. The Kings wanting to make that deal and get rid of him, and Darcy Kemper going the other way. Kemper had a rough year in Washington, so I don't think there's that many Caps fans that would necessarily see their goaltending as being anything less than better than last year. But Dubois as a second-line center can work, but does it? Is Dubois going to have that bounce back? And then there's Mangiapane, who was acquired from Calgary. He had a bit of a down year, too. 73 games, 14 goals, 26 assists, 40 points. Dubois can be a 25 to 30 goal scorer. Mangiapane can be a 25 to 30 goal scorer. It's all about the chemistry that this top six finds and what the lines end up looking like. I think they'll be very open. Spencer Carberry, I think, will be very open to toying around with this, messing with it in the preseason, and try to find that perfect formula. And again, we'll talk about a couple of forwards that might be worth mentioning in this video too. On the blue line, you've got the added Jacob Chychrun, brought in from Ottawa. 82 games, 14 goals, 27 assists, 41 points for Chychrun. He can play better than he did this past season for Ottawa. I don't think he had a great year in Ottawa. Does he end up having a really, really strong season with the Caps? We'll see. But if you pair him with Karlsson, there should be some offense there. Karlsson, 10 goals, 42 assists, 52 points in 82 games. Karlsson's play not where it was, say, 5 years ago, but he's still an excellent defenseman in the NHL. No argument from me about what he can do. But then you get into the fact that this top four has gone through some big changes over the last couple of years. Sandin, of course, brought in last year from Toronto. 68 games, 3 goals, 20 assists, 23 points. I'm a Rasmus Sandin fan. And I love Matt Roy. Matt Roy added from the Kings. 5 goals, 20 assists, 25 points in 81 games. Excellent defensive defenseman who's got some offense there too. And again, if you have Roy and Sandin together, I think that could be a winner. And there's depth. Ferrari could end up in that top four. You have Van Riemsdyk who can jump up if somebody gets hurt. So the blue line, I think, is pretty good in Washington. Then you get to the goaltending. Both Lindgren and Thompson had 25 wins this past season. Lindgren was 25-16-7 with a 911 save percentage. Thompson was 25-14-5 with Vegas with a 908 save percentage. I think that's an excellent addition for them. And I think bringing in Thompson on a very cheap contract and being able to ditch Kemper's contract, even though it means bringing on Dubois' contract, we'll see how the gamble pays off. But I don't think that's an awful gamble. You guys can let me know your thoughts. But when we look at the exits, we have Kemper. Oshie is going to miss the season with injury. We'll see if he comes back next year. Pacioretty, of course, goes as a UFA. Malenstein was traded. Jensen was traded in the Chychrun deal. And so, yeah, some question marks there. And, of course, one that's notable in their absence is Backstrom. We'll talk about Backstrom when we get over to this part. But, yeah, that's one player that I think Ovi really misses. And so, yeah, we'll talk about it. The additions, the previously mentioned Dubois, Mangiapane, Chychrun, Roy, Thompson, as well as Taylor Radish, who's a pretty good bet on having a bounce back after a miserable season with Chicago, and Duhaime. Solid fourth line option for them. They pick him up. I don't think that's a terrible move either. So 2021-2022, the Caps were a team with 100 points. They finished 44, 26, and 12, 610 points percentage. The following year, they missed the playoffs. 35, 37, and 10, 80 points, 488 points percentage. And then, again, against what most expected, they got better last year under Spencer Carberry. 40, 31, and 11 record, 91 points, 555 points percentage. So will this team this season take a jump up? Will they stay about the same, or will they fall back into the 488 range? I don't really have an answer there. We'll see what happens with them. Obviously, before I do the season previews, I poll the channel, and the channel tells me how the fans feel. I do feel like the Caps are going to stay in the mix for a wild card spot, but can they get there? And then the question is, when they get there, are they finally going to win a round? So first off, you have Ovechkin sitting 41 goals behind Gretzky, and he turns 39 on September 17th. So Ovechkin's chase of Gretzky is slowing down. That likely continues. But this is a team that hasn't won a round since they won the Stanley Cup in 2018. 2019, they lost 4-3 against Carolina in the first round. 2020, they lost against the Islanders 4-1 in the first round. 2021, they lost against Boston in the first round 4-1. 2022, they lost against Florida in the first round 4-2 before missing the playoffs in 2023. And then, as previously mentioned, they got swept by the New York Rangers this year. So this is a team that has had its struggle in the playoffs. Prior to that Stanley Cup win in 2018, they couldn't get out of the second round. Now they're not able to get out of the first round in the last 5 attempts they've made. So the lineup changes made, I am sure, are with the idea that they want to be more dangerous come playoff time and win a round. But there's risk there because I don't know if you get enough goals from the forward group to get there. I think the defense is good, but again, when you've added a couple of new guys in Chychrun and Roy, it can take a little while to learn. And so that's going to be interesting to watch if all these new players have, go through a learning experience, which leads to a rough record, because traditionally, if teams get off to a slow start, they have a really hard time making that charge and making the playoffs later in the season. 2 wild cards I wanted to mention. Miroshnichenko came in at the end of the season and didn't look bad. Now, his numbers in the AHL and the NHL this past season, not top 6 level, but he's got some good energy. There's definitely potential there. Could he hit his stride at the NHL level? Maybe. And then there's John Leonard. He was drafted 8th overall in 2023, and it looks like he's going back to Boston College this year. But once that season's done, does he sign with the Caps? And what could John Leonard do for this lineup? Leonard is part of a really dynamic draft class from last year and could absolutely help them out. I would think that the experience at Boston College over last year and then this upcoming season could be huge. So we'll see what happens there and if he ends up jumping into the lineup and where he ends up slotting in should he end up doing so. So they're over the cap right now, and this is going to restrict what they're able to do in the offseason. However, both Backstrom and Oshie are headed for LTIR. That's almost $15 million in cap space that then comes off the books. And they'll be able to make at least one addition, I would think, before the season starts. Unlikely to be anything major. But I do look at this lineup and think to myself, okay, you've got 2 scoring lines. Their third line could be a decent scoring line as well if things fall their way. But is this a team that should have gone all in on the offseason? Not all in, all in's overstating it. I'll draw that back. Is this a team that should have been buying during the offseason with the idea that they could get back into contention, or should they have started that rebuild or retool process? Let me know your thoughts, because I know there's that debate with both Washington and Pittsburgh, two teams that always seem to be right next to one another. And so that debate of whether or not the Caps can get themselves, built up all gung ho and get back into the hunt for the Stanley Cup. Can they do that? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event that you have not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support during the off season. It's always encouraging to see that the traffic stays relatively high, because I totally understand that with it being hot out and being the middle of July, people aren't necessarily thinking about hockey. So for people who check out my videos daily, it is greatly appreciated. So I will be here daily to do that for all you fine people on the internet. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.